Well, the story of it is contained in Bede's writing, and in my own journey with the Celtic saints and Northumbrian story, I was reading Bede's history of the English-speaking people, and he records the story of a cowherd at the Whitby Abbey. Now, the Abbey of Whitby was overseen by Hild, I think was a niece of Aidan, and he was just one of the servants. He wasn't a monk, he wasn't a religious, he was just a cowherd, he was just part of the community. And I was fascinated by this story of how he came to write the first English language hymn, the first song in the English language. And the story goes, and Bede records it, that Caedmon would sit in the great storytelling circles that they used to have, and maybe passing around a harp or passing around a stick to say whose turn it was to tell the story. But Caedmon was always terrified. He loved hearing the stories and he loved hearing the songs, but he was always terrified because he couldn't sing a note. He was completely tone deaf. He just had no way of telling these stories or singing these songs. So every time it came round to his turn, he would run out of the room and he would go and hide. And the story goes that one night he did this. He ran out of the storytelling circle and he ran into the byre where it was his bed, and he slept. He fell asleep in the cowshed with his cows. And during the night he had a dream. And in the dream he sang. The first time he sang a beautiful song, and it was a song praising God's creation. It was a song about how God made a roof for the world and how he made the earth for man, and then he peopled the earth with mankind. And when he woke up in the morning, he could remember the song. Not only could he remember the song, but he could sing it word perfect, and he had the most beautiful singing voice. And he sang it to one of the monks in the community, and the monk immediately said, "Wow, this is amazing, never heard anything like this before, you must come and sing this to Abbess Hild." And so he took Caedmon to Abbess Hild, and Caedmon sang this beautiful hymn over to her, and she immediately said, "Well, Caedmon, I think this is God's call on you. You need to become part of the community, you need to become a monk." And Caedmon did become part of the community, and he then explored this gift, and he started to write settings of the scriptures. And he set the scriptures in English and started singing them. And that gave rise to a whole school of songwriting and of poetry, which also included later on the Dream of the Rood, which is a great Old English epic where the cross tells its story, but that came out of his school as well. So just that little cowherd in Whitby that God gifted has this amazing unfolding story that actually is part of the English-speaking culture. And I think also means that this is why I think today English is used so much for worship and praise. It comes from that time when it was discovered that it was a vehicle of worship and praise, as well as Latin, as well as all the other languages of the world.
Now you were singing this in Old English, so how did you come across learning Old English to actually be able to sing this song?
I'm a parrot anyway. I love language. I love the sound of language, so I love picking up what people are saying in other languages as a way of breaking into their world and into their communication. And I read Tolkien's biography, J.R.R. Tolkien, who was a great professor of Old English, and he said that when he first came across Old English, he felt it was a language he already knew. And when I read that, I thought, now, I'd love to find out what that means. And so I got an Old English, there's not many people that like this, would get an Old English grammar out of the library, but I got an Old English grammar out of the library, and as I looked at it, and the pronunciation, something began to spark. And then I remembered that I also had on my bookshelf a copy of The Dream of the Road, the Dream of the Cross, which someone had given me that I couldn't actually understand. When I took that out, I started to read it, and this amazing epic poem in Old English began to unfold. And also Caedmon's song was part of that story, because he wrote it originally, sang it in Old English. And actually there are different settings of it, different dialects. There's one in a Northumbrian dialect, there's one in a Wessex dialect, I think I've sung it in the Northumbrian dialect, so without the Geordie accent. but it's fascinating how that there's so much even in that of a culture that goes back well beyond the Normans, obviously, back into, and that's the culture these people were working in.